Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Good afternoon and welcome to Collaborative Connections radio show and podcast sponsored by KLM Consulting. I'm your host, Kelly Lorenzen. We are coming to you live from the comforts of our home while Karen Nowicki is producing the show at Phoenix Business RadioX studio inside Max 6. Collaborative Connections is a radio series created to bring entrepreneurs, nonprofits, and associations together to build relationships, foster collaboration, and grow a stronger community together. Our hope for today is that listeners and guests alike will walk away with a golden nugget, a resource, or a tip and trick for their business. The sponsor of our show, KLM Consulting, is an on-demand business concierge, marketing, and project management firm with over 17 years of award-winning business savvy. KLM Consulting helps fast-growing companies and entrepreneurs build, brand, and brag about their businesses. Today, I have the honor of being in the studio with three amazing people, and I'd love to introduce you to them now. Jesus Verdugo, welcome to the show today. Market Mortgage Capital, thanks for being on with us.
Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Rochelle Poulton with X Firm Law, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
And Nancy Hetrick, Smarter Divorce Solutions. Thanks for coming on with us today.
Thanks so much. I think we're going to have a great conversation.
We appreciate you all taking the time out of your busy schedules. I know we're all trying to manage a lot, right? Working from home, but helping still busy in our businesses. And so I'm just wanting to have a conversation around what's going on in your businesses, what you're working on, maybe some advice for our listeners for what they can do as, in each of your prospective businesses. But of course, I'd love to start with you telling us a little bit about your businesses, because as I know everybody, but for our listeners, tell us a little bit about what you do, what your business is, and what you specialize in. Rochelle, you want to go first?
Sure. I own a law firm called X Firm PLLC, and we help people with financial transaction planning. So we assist people and businesses who are looking to achieve some in financial result, whether that's buying a house or buying a portfolio of real estate, buying a business, a building, or just growing their business. We help people with financial exposure and mitigate whatever liability they may have out there so they can achieve their goals. So I own several different companies, but X Firm is my baby, and I'm the managing partner and owner, and super excited about its future and moving forward. Arizona Credit Law Group's still out there. It still helps people with credit repair, debt settlement, and bankruptcy, but X Firm does mostly focus on financial consulting.
Which everybody's going to need right now and after this, right? Your phone, I know from us talking a lot, your phone is ringing off the hook with everybody calling right now, I'm sure.
Yeah, a lot of people and business owners have questions about what they should be doing right now. They're feeling a little tight, wondering what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks, in the next 4 weeks. A lot of companies that have been shuttered because they're non-essential, like gyms and restaurants and, salons. Personal services mostly are really kind of having a hard time because they don't have memberships, and the memberships that they do have are for people that can't use their services. So it's become a little bit of a limbo waiting game. So my advice for those people is kind of very specific to their situation, but for the most part, it is see what you can do to work out lease agreements, lease abatement with your landlord for a little while. A lot of landlords in Arizona are willing to work with tenants because they can't afford to replace the tenant either. No one is going to start a new business right now. So a lot of landlords are really open to creative solutions with business owners who are really feeling the pinch. And then, of course, I've been recommending everyone apply for the CARES Act, the Paycheck Protection Program. And I know funding is tight, and if you haven't already gotten in line, you may be a little bit behind the ball, but it's never too late to try.
Good advice. Thank you so much. Jesus, tell us a little bit about what your business is and what you're working on these days.
Yes, so I'm a mortgage loan originator, licensed mortgage loan originator, and also a realtor too at the same time. So I do a little bit of both, but most of my focus is on the finance side. So we, my company, Market Mortgage Capital, we're a mortgage broker. So we have access to various lenders, not just specifically with one bank. So we have an array of products and services to really help the individual themselves based on their particular needs. Anything from the first-time homebuyer to the major investor that buys multiple properties, like Rochelle mentioned, but trying to bundle real estate all at once, what have you. So yeah, it's been really busy right now. It's fortunate that that's the case, but with the rates where they're at, people are really jumping on taking advantage of that opportunity because people right now are kind of a little worried, but I think it's a good chance to potentially find a way to save yourself some money for the future because of moments like now, right? So, but yeah, it's been pretty busy. For sure.
I bet everybody's like, okay, how can I save money, right? They also have time to look at stuff, whereas before we were all so busy, I wouldn't have had time to think about refinancing or, looking at any of that stuff, right? I'm seeing that in my business, like, oh, wait, I have time to work on marketing. Yeah. All my clients are like, wait, now I can do that project. Can you help me? And so they actually have the time. So for us being, having to stay home, it gives us actually a little more time to think about what our priorities are, right? What are we working on? What's going to help us in the long-term future? So it's nice that like Rochelle said, both of you can help people right now look at getting some money. So that's great.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of our influx of our business currently is. It's like you said, a lot of people are home and have that opportunity to really think and about what their finances, which is good. I think a lot of times we have these conversations with individuals that we're such in a hurry because we're busy with work and didn't have the time. It's nice to have a conversation now where you can really talk about their finances and what their goals are and have their attention to be able to help them accomplish that. So it's a good time right now to do that for sure.
That's great. Welcome to the show, Nancy. Thanks for being on with us. Tell us a little bit about your business.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kelly, for having me. So I'm in the business of divorce, but in a different way, in a very different way than most people are used to. I'm a financial advisor by trade. So we all have kind of that finance thread that runs through what we do. But I've been a full-service financial advisor for almost 22 years now. 2007, went through my own less than optimal divorce after 17 years of marriage, and really discovered that the resources that I really wanted just didn't exist. We really didn't feel like we belonged in courtrooms or with attorneys. And at the same time, we didn't need a referee, that is your typical mediator. What we really needed was advice on how to structure our settlement. And there was just nothing out there. And I was working in corporate at that time, and I discovered this credential, which I subsequently got. I'm a certified divorce financial analyst. And I thought, wow, I would love to help people not make the same mistakes that I made in my divorce financially. And at the time, I approached my employer saying, hey, I'd really like to pursue this credential. And they said, oh, no. That's an area that we just don't want to go into. The risk is too high. Thanks, but no thanks. So in 2011, I left my corporate job and went independent and started my very specific niche business, Smarter Divorce Solutions, which has since now evolved into a team of 6 people. We have 3 mediators, 2 certified divorce financial analysts, 1 financial coach, 2 certified divorce coaches, and 3 financial advisors. And we all obviously have multiple roles, right? But our mission now is to offer couples a choice that has not existed. We actually call it Mediation Plus, where you have a neutral mediator and a neutral financial expert to help make sure that you're fully educated on all the financial options that are available in divorce settlements. And then we have a family law attorney that contracts with us to put together all the legal documents at the end. You never see a judge, you never see a courtroom, and it truly is a kinder, gentler, much more affordable way to go through this process. And it allows you to come out the other side still respecting each other enough to co-parent. One of the things we tell all our clients is we're here to help you be the best divorced family you could be, because you're always going to be a family. That's not going to change. And so it's the most powerful work I've ever done.
So cool. Talk about the definition of collaborative connections, right?
Exactly.
Having all those people, together doing that for people is what a cool idea. It's like that old show we used to watch that was like the medicine, the doctor's office, but it had every type of medicine, the counselor and don't you wish you had like everybody all in one room? You're like, okay, tell me what I'm supposed to be doing for all this.
That's what I love about Nancy's business is it's so effective and efficient, because divorce can get so complicated so quickly. But if you've got a third party involved like Nancy right from the beginning, things just go so much more smoothly and people feel more confident in the outcome. Whereas, just going through and trying to do it yourself through the court system, people forget to include assets, they forget to include debt, and it ends up just being a total mess years later. So just, consulting with a professional and having everyone on the same page. If I could make more people go through Nancy, I would for their divorce solutions.
It could be really shocking when people find out how much they didn't know that they didn't know.
Yeah.
And that is typically the experience. Almost every couple that we work with at some point in the process will say, we can do that. I had no idea that was something we could do. And so we really specialize in these creative settlement solutions that, frankly, you're never going to get from attorneys or courtrooms. And it makes it, things like couples continuing to own real estate together with some very special terms put in place to help each of them be protected fully. And continuing to own businesses together, one partner, maybe one person being a silent partner so they can get a distribution every year. And it feels like alimony, even though it's not. But it helps them with cash flow needs and, so all kinds of creativity that really we're the only kinds of professionals that bring that to the table.
So cool. And to have people in your corner like Jesus and Rochelle and other people that can all combine your efforts, right? And help each other. Like, okay, I know the perfect person. I need to ask this question, or I know who to have those trusted people in your life. I had one of our other shows recently was financial advisor. And I said, and the accountant needs to be in the same room, right? You can't just decide what your financial future is without your real estate agent, without your financial advisor and your accountant all talking to each other. Like, what is the best case scenario for all of this together, right? It's so nice to have that. So Nancy, if somebody was thinking about considering divorce, especially right now, not that I am, I know, I'm sure my husband's listening, so this is not about me. But if somebody was thinking about divorce, what is their, what should they do financially to prepare?
Well, there's a lot going on right now, of course, right? And we are actually doing a lot of social media and internet presence saying just because you're stuck at home doesn't mean you have to be stuck in your marriage. And so we're doing a lot of virtual online mediations. And it's a very, very difficult time for couples that have been considering divorce and are now stuck at home together. And we've added on financial stress on top of it. So my best advice of what can you do to prepare financially is don't try to prepare financially. Come and talk to me first. Come and talk to Rochelle, because chances are what people are trying to do to prepare is either not appropriate, completely unnecessary, or there are so many other options available that they're not even aware of that would frankly be better options. So the best advice I have is get advice and help as soon as possible so you know what you're looking at. One of the things we do for people sometimes is just a what-if scenario. Some couples that maybe they haven't even decided divorce yet, but they want to know if they go down that path, can we even do that and financially be okay on the other side? And I mean, I've had couples in their 70s that said, you know what, we're still good friends. And if we can't afford to live separately, then we'll keep doing what we're doing. But I want to make sure she's okay. I want to make sure he's okay. And whenever I hear that, I'm just like, oh, you are the kind of people I love to work with, because they still care about each other. They just know that they're going to be better friends than they were spouses.
Right. And bringing in Jesus into that, I assume there's ways, like you said, people don't know what they don't know, right? So having somebody to talk to about the mortgages, about the real estate, about stuff that they already have, on hand is probably worth doing, talking to all of you, before you make any decisions, I assume.
Yes, Nancy and Rochelle hit on some really good points. I wish, I say this in my business I've said this for years, I wish I could get a hold of people when they're really young and teach them about financial literacy. Because some of these individuals that come and talk to me, I'm like, man, if I would have talked to you 5 years ago, 3 years ago, because a lot of times I can't help them. And even in regards to specific when it comes to divorce, that's awesome. She's got financial planning involved into it, because I think even in my business in real estate and mortgage, I wish people would take that approach of getting not just my advice, but some, financial advisor, CPAs, like you mentioned, just so they can know what they're getting into. I mean, we're talking about sometimes buying $250,000, $350,000 worth of a house. I mean, that's a huge transaction. And some people just go into it like they're buying a t-shirt. So it's so important to have those conversations with multiple aspects of the financial transaction and professionals, so they'll know what their impact will be long term. I mean, it's not an easy process, and it should not be taken lightly whatsoever.
Hey, Suze, do you do anything with reverse mortgages?
To be honest with you, I have not touched that in years. It is very complicated. I'm very glad that HUD is taking the approach where they require the loan officers themselves to be certified. We're not, so I haven't done them over the years. All the really good changes happen over the years. Now it's required for the actual borrower to even go through a counseling process before they do that. It takes a little bit of certification, which I think it's awesome. Yeah, I don't, to answer your question.
Yeah, well, and I'll tell you, it's been really fascinating because I know, like you said, in the last 20 years, today's reverse mortgage is not the same as the vehicles in the 80s that got such a bad reputation, right? And I'm finding for we fondly refer to them as silver divorce clients. That sounds a little better than gray divorce, right? For our silver divorce clients, reverse mortgages can be a really creative way to keep them in homes. And actually, I used one for this couple that owned a home together. They had about $200,000 in equity. So they sold that home, did 2 reverse purchases. They each got $200,000 condos with the $100,000 down and an instant reverse mortgage. And so then they never had a mortgage payment the rest of their lives.
That's awesome.
They were so excited. It was a real fabulous opportunity for them. Yeah. So it's just another piece of that real estate creativity that, because as you mentioned, a lot of the time, their home is their biggest asset.
Yeah.
And so the decisions that have to be made around it are really critical. Yeah.
Especially mortgage, I think it's such an emotional transaction. So especially this children involved, heirs after the person passes, that's really where the conversation, when I used to be able to do them, would go. What about my kids? What am I going to leave them? It's a very careful path got to take with them, because you don't want to, insult them, and you don't want to insult the children. A lot of times they're expecting that's going to be my inheritance, but definitely that conversation of, hey, your family, your parents need to survive and make the bill payments, and a lot of times that mortgage payments, it's going to hurt them in trying to pay their medical bills or what have you. So, those are great options that are out there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I always just ask them if they really want their parents moving into their back bedroom in 5 years.
Yeah. Anytime I can utilize a reverse mortgage as an alternative to hiring me to do something, I do. They're so awesome. They're such great tools when you qualify, and they can save people so much money, especially when they're on a fixed income and they're equity rich and cash poor, it is such an awesome solution.
I agree with that for sure.
Hey, so speaking of mortgage payments, is it what's the benefit of refinancing versus making additional payments, right? On your, especially right now, like refinancing.
Yeah. Well, it's really a case-by-case scenario. I mean, that's kind of where I pride myself, that I take every individual as the individual. Not ever do we try to sit down and say, hey, refinance just because rates are low. There's individuals that are very financially savvy, have made that extra effort themselves to pay additional money to the principal and are ahead of the game. So, we do analysis of where they're at in their term. We do analysis on how much they owe, and if what they're doing now, they're already accomplishing savings and interest over the long term. But if we find out that they're just making their minimum payment, for example, and any additional, and their rates are in the 5s or high 4s, and there might be an opportunity then to really refinance them and get them into a lower payment or reduce the term, which really I think is always a bigger goal, to get rid of that mortgage payment as soon as possible, because it'd be nice to be mortgage free, right? And I have that extra payment. So we have those conversations of what their goals are. And so a lot of times it's just really based on that individual, how they progressed in their own with their mortgage payment to see is it worth it or not. But I think really it's always make that effort either by refinancing or by just on your own making that extra payment to just get ahead of the game. Doing an amortization calculations, you go online on Google and just Google amortization calculator, plug your numbers in, and it'll tell you what happens by $100 a month or extra $100 a year and all the savings. It's probably the main goal is to always tell people to do that if possible, for sure.
That's a good tip. Everybody could go do that easy without having to call anybody, right? Just Google it.
Call me if you can, but
wait, Google it first and then come to you and say,
no, I'm joking.
That's awesome. There's a lot of talk, Jesus, about mortgage forbearance.
Yes.
I'm going to say that wrong. Even my sister who lives in Canada, they said all of them, they have said you don't have to pay your mortgage for 6 months. So which is really nice for them. What are the options right now?
So with what's called the CARES Act that was passed just at the end of the month, one of the options, well, not options, kind of one of the directions that was given to mortgage servicers, which are the people that actually make your mortgage payment to, was to allow mortgage forbearance, which has always been allowed, quote unquote, and it's always been an option. Now it's just, I guess you could say, simpler. You could communicate with your mortgage servicer and start that process. You could do request up to 6 months of that forbearance, which really forbearance is kind of a delay of payment. It's not forgiveness. Your payment doesn't go away. You're just delaying that payment for a future time. The concerns really are right now, from everything I've read online and doing my research on that particular act itself, is there was no clear direction on what happens after the forbearance is over. It seems to have been left up to the mortgage servicers or the mortgage companies collecting your payment, what's going to happen. So you could run the risk of that lump sum being owed. So, for example, $1,000 a month payment, and you have a forbearance for 6 months. At that 6 months, potentially, you have $6,000 a month bill, $6,000 bill due. Some other options have been spoken. There might be, that money might be spread a period of time, or deferred, which means might be tacked on to the end, or extending your term. But there's been no clear message that what is going to happen. So I would suggest, if anybody's in considering that option, contingent on what their financial situation may be, is to really think about that. And the most important part is communicate with your mortgage lender or servicer, because just stop making your payments is not working and won't activate it. It'll actually potentially hurt your credit. So communication is key.
Into foreclosure. You can't just stop making the payment.
Right.
You will initiate foreclosure proceedings
Yes.
if you didn't opt into the program. It's not automatic. It's really important that people make their mortgage payment, and if they can't communicate.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's where you all come in, right? But I know from the professionals what each person can do.
Yeah, and Rochelle, that you bring up a really good point. I have a concern right now that Yesterday, the stimulus checks hit a huge number of people in this country. And man, I hope people understand that money is to pay their bills.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not to go buy a big screen TV, that they need to be paying their mortgage, their rent, their credit cards. And, I hope that we don't end up with some boomerang domino issues down the road as a result of some of the funding that's going on.
Yeah, that's my biggest concern also, Nancy. Just thinking about it with some conversations I had a couple of clients of, they don't know where their income's going to go in the next weeks because they're still working, but there's that fear, and so that forbearance. I'm like, well, that I can't tell you either way because I don't know where your income's going, but it's the long-term effects, like you said. What's going to happen 6 months down the road and a year road if these people owe this money and they don't have it, and there's still no job, or they haven't recouped the income, they lost, what have you. It's pretty concerning for sure.
Yeah.
Rochelle, what would you suggest right now for people to do related to their financially? What can they do to help themselves right now?
I think the most important thing to do right now is to take a look at where your money goes. Now is a really awesome opportunity to open your bank statements electronically and see what subscriptions you've got, how much money you actually are spending on food and gas. And now is a really great time to start looking at what your cash outflow actually looks like. Where are you actually spending money? Now is the time to sort of do those things. So when you do have the stimulus check, you can plan accordingly. Like maybe it makes sense to prepay your rent for the next 3 months. So you've got a place to live, or, prepay your car payment for a little bit. You have to make those arrangements. You can't just give someone a lump sum and think they'll distribute it for you. You have to call and tell them that's what you're doing with this money. So now is kind of the time to, if you are expecting the stimulus check, figure out what monthly expenses to pay that you're not going to have to worry about for a couple of months, especially if your hours have been reduced, or you're looking at being unemployed or currently unemployed and waiting for unemployment to start paying. There's just a lot of that kind of going on. And for small business owners, same thing. Now is a great time to evaluate those vendor contracts. How much are you spending every month on all of those subscription services? Are they helping you? Are they actually effective for your business? Where can you cut back? And do you need to resume paying those things in the future? Now is just a really good time to take a look at your finances and make some decisions. From a legal perspective, it's kind of hard to say stop paying your creditors. You don't know if that's the right advice right now. If you're not financially in a hardship and you're still working and you can still afford to pay, you probably should. But if you can't get blood out of a stone, so if you're kind of in that boat, that sort of answers the question for you. But a lot of people are asking, should I just stop paying my credit cards? And I'm like, no, probably not. I would not advise that. Contact your creditors.
Oh my gosh. I know you can't with any of our industries, right? Don't just stop doing something or don't do something without asking for advice, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Gosh. So what about debt, Rochelle? I know you and I work together a lot, so I know a lot about it, but for consumers, student loan debt, medical bills, that sort of thing. Tell us a little bit more about how you help people in those areas.
Yeah, so student loans, I break into two categories. There's private student loans and there's federal student loans. So people who have federal student loans from March 28th to September 30th, they are in an administrative forbearance, which means that no payments are due. They will still continue to accrue interest, but you don't have to pay on them, and it won't hurt your credit or ding you otherwise for not making those student loan payments. But whether or not you should pay depends on, of course, your financial situation. Like if you can afford to pay and you want to make a dent, now is a good time. If you don't want to accumulate interest, but if you can't afford it, because the average student loan payment's about $350 a month, then maybe you take advantage of the forbearance. But again, that's something that if you're on auto pay, you have to stop and then remember to get back on when it comes to October 1st. But for private loans, that option is not available. A lot of the private lenders are still up in the air about what they're going to do. It's really a case-by-case basis. Some of them are just granting people a 30-day forbearance if they call and ask. A lot of them are not. So if you've got private student loans, it's a much trickier situation, and it's a developing one. No one really knows how they're going to answer that question tomorrow. So just because the answer today is no, doesn't mean you should give up. I think in sales, you got to get 9 no's before you get a yes. So get through those no's.
That's right. That's why I got to keep marketing.
But for medical debt, with coronavirus related cases, a lot of healthcare companies are not issuing bills for that. Like if you've been hospitalized or testing or whatever, none of that should be charged. For employers, a lot of the healthcare insurance providers are forbearing your monthly premiums on health insurance coverage benefits. So if that's a big line item for you, you may want to contact them and see if they'll give you that 90-day extension. Some of them are doing it for 3 months or a whole quarter. So that can be a really big money saver for a minute. Obviously, you will have to pay that back, and it's unclear how you'll have to pay that back. But, for now, it is relief if you need to keep your benefits intact, but can't afford to make the payments for your employees. So it just depends on where you are in business. And for medical bills, if you're making voluntary payments on old bills, or you've got a major medical event coming up, it's kind of hard to save right now. So it's pretty hard to give people advice on what to do with upcoming medical expenses that they know they're going to have with the state of the economy being so in development.
I like that. In development. Rochelle, you talk a lot about scams. I know we know as consumers, there's tons and tons of scams that always come out of everything, right? So right now, is there any scams that you'd like to share for consumers?
There's 2 major ones. One in the Valley is the door-to-door scam, where people are coming by and offering to clean your house for free and to test it for COVID-19, and then they rob you. It's not cool. So don't let people into your house. Sometimes they say they're from the CDC. Sometimes they say they're from the state. No one is conducting those door-to-door inspections. And you can report those kinds of fraud to the COVID-19 task force for fraud through the Arizona Attorney General's office. So there is a hotline number that you can call. You just Google COVID-19 fraud task force, and it should give you the phone number that you can call and report this kind of suspicious activity. Obviously, police forces are spread a little thin. So, these things need to be investigated, but it's difficult to prioritize and that's why they have the task force in place, is so they can track the activity. The second major one is related to the stimulus check. Obviously, the only way to get the funds is through your banking info, and no one is going to call you and ask for your checking and routing information. No one is going to send you an email. So don't give out your bank account info over the phone, and don't respond to emails that are requesting this information. You have to go directly to the IRS to update your checking and routing account info. And I just posted about it on X Firm Law. That's the handle for our Facebook and our Instagram, with the link, so that way you can safely and securely go through the IRS and update them with your info. So don't fall into those scams.
Yeah, and I put that same link on my website as well.
Perfect.
It's so scary. I literally got chills on my whole body thinking about somebody coming to your house, and especially like if my grandma was still alive, and little old people, and they think, okay, sure. She used to start letting people in our house, the last couple of years before we moved her to the back house at my mom's. Like, oh my gosh, tell your parents, tell your grandparents, like, spread this information as far as people know, kids, right? Oh my God.
Kelly, I'm sorry, Rochelle, I need to cut you off. If I could tag along into the whole kind of scam thing, I mean, something that I kind of some of the warnings with the CFPB, which is a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, is put out there, is be careful with a lot of loan modification companies that are going to start popping up. Kind of just a little bit of reminiscent of what happened in 2008, 2009, all those years when the economy downturn and people were having trouble with their mortgages. These quote unquote companies would come by and to offer to help you with applications, and never really did anything. Just took your money and ran. So with all this fears happening, so it's always best to directly communicate with your mortgage company, your servicer, to figure out what are your options instead of some person that randomly calls you and offers to help you. It's very, very unfortunate these times. A lot of they're opportunistic, and so you got to be very, very careful with that.
So many things that the people like us are trying to help people, help consumers right now, right? But of course, there's going to be the opposite, all the scams going on. Speaking of helping, what about first-time home buyers? There's people that before this happened that were excited to buy their first home.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about the first-time home buyers.
If the individual is still has a job, that's obviously the most important because they have to qualify. So if their finances are still in line and they're not in any risk in that, nothing's really changed to a certain extent. The qualifications are still the same, especially here in Arizona where inventory of property is so low. It's still a good market to buy a home in. So there's still the programs out there that have been offered with first-time homebuyer assistance if that's needed. There's still low down payment programs. So nothing's really changed in that regard for first-time homebuyers. Really, the biggest concern is just their qualification due to their jobs. Just as long as their jobs are still intact and their incomes are still fine, it should be okay. There are some lenders that, again, we're mortgage brokers. We have access to a lot of lenders. We get to see the gambit of what's going on. Some lenders are a little afraid and they've made it kind of strict. I mean, just in the news, it came out that Chase is requiring % down and 700 FICOs across the board, right? Regardless. But there's still, the other lenders we work with that will go as low as 3% down. So those options are still available there for those individuals that are first-time home buyers. But again, it's just a little bit worrisome because of jobs. We don't know what's going on. So, but if they feel safe, we can still do it.
That's awesome. And Rochelle can help ahead of time, right? Making your credit back up so you can buy something.
Yeah.
Credit counseling is such a big part of that. People will, I get a lot of referrals from loan officers and it's like, I'm sorry, but this guy has like 80 grand in collections. They are not closing this month. Like that is not going to get approved right now. But that's, just one no today. So it could be yes in like a month. So, sometimes just a little bit of tweaks on improving your credit scores will save you tens of thousands of dollars in interest. And sometimes it really is just worth it to wait the 30 days to make those little tweaks on your credit to optimize for whatever type of financing you're doing. It could be a car, it could be a house, it could be a business loan, whatever. Just good planning is good planning.
Right. Rochelle and I, in the past, we've communicated a couple of scenarios. And I think the conversation would always go, again, I wish we could talk to these people before they got themselves into a situation. It's funny, just yesterday I was talking to a colleague and somebody's trying to buy a house and yet they were able to buy 2 cars, in a short period of time. And like, well, I don't qualify for a house, but I was able to buy 2 cars. Like, yeah, you reduce your qualification amount. It's dramatic. It's funny to see over the years, credit scores have actually gone up, but their qualification amount has gone down because they keep increasing their debt obligations. I think back to your question about first-time home buyers, I think it's very important for people to start thinking about that. Don't increase your debt, don't increase car payments, credit cards, because it reduces how much you qualify for. Especially here in Maricopa County, where home values are still going up even after all this. It limits to what they can buy. So it's always good to have that financial plan. Talking to Rochelle and what have to know, get prepared 6 months, a year before you even think about buying a house. And those are very important steps to take instead of just waking up one day and say, I want to buy a house too, so I'm going to go apply. It's be prepared far in advance.
It's interesting what both of you are talking about. Of gosh, I wish I could get to people 3-4 years earlier. What we really are talking about here is the whole financial literacy program we have, knowledge we have in our country. We don't teach our children how to deal with money. No. And so, I'm a huge advocate for adding financial literacy courses into high schools. Every high school student should be learning the basics of credit and compound interest and borrowing. And it continues to be shocking to me that high wage earner professionals have little to no understanding about their finances and their money. It continues to surprise me.
Because nobody taught us it.
Yeah. You know, I'm involved. Well, I am involved with Junior Achievement. I spent a while. I used to do a lot of classes. I remember just when they went to my high school when I was young, and they taught us about how to balance a checkbook. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And going through their program and actually providing those classes has been awesome. Yeah, I think financial literacy is a huge, important key to what we're facing now, where people are getting caught, without their jobs, unfortunately, and they were not financially prepared. It's very important. I wish that we could push more and more to just, you said, having high schools or even before.
You want to talk about pandemic. I mean, this is the U.S. pandemic. Can you guys imagine if even 50% of Americans had the financial education, how much more solid our economy would be?
Yes.
It would be stunning. And a lot of governors, a lot of states, they are, they're trying to raise awareness. Governor Ducey just declared that April will be Financial Awareness Month, and a lot of other states around the union are doing the same thing. Unfortunately, what I'm finding at this point is a proclamation might be made, but there's no funding behind it. There's nothing to actually roll it out into communities. And so it does really rely on professionals like us to participate in our communities and be doing some public service work to start furthering these causes.
Amen.
Yeah.
It's true. I just wrote a book called The Beginner's Guide to Good Financial Health.
Nice.
It's like a 40-page workbook of, how to manage, starting with budgeting to credit counseling, dealing with bad debt, just gives you a plan for what to do, because I think that's the biggest issue when people start deciding they want to do something financially is they don't know where to start. So the whole point of that is just to give people a starting point. It's free. You can download it from my website. You can order a print copy here pretty soon. The other option too is the whole point of our other podcast, Legitimate, is to talk about consumer rights issues. Like, it seems really unfair that you almost have to be an expert in not getting scammed. So just dealing with all of these issues every day. And I know we all do. I know, Nancy, you do a lot for financial literacy as well. I mean, you train other financial coaches. Like, that is awesome.
Well, and honestly, I mean, Rochelle, this is why we brought financial coaching into my business, is as I started to discover, and pardon the stereotype, but stereotypes exist for a reason. How many women had delegated the management of the financial household, not because they weren't capable of doing it, because it was the easiest thing to do, right? Mm-hmm. We call them the non-CFO spouse. And now, after 20 years, 30 years of marriage, all of a sudden, you have to manage all your own finances. And some of these women had not paid a bill in 30 years. And I thought, this is not okay. We can't send them out into the world without this knowledge. So we have to start offering this basic financial coaching to help empower them to be self-sufficient and to be good stewards of their own wealth.
Absolutely. And the Fresh Start, the nonprofit here, Fresh Start, does financial literacy classes. One of my clients teaches that. We've got to start somewhere, right? We have to start with teaching those free classes. We have to start teaching our kids that, at a young age. My kids collect cans to go, sell the cans and the copper. My husband owns an electrical company, and then puts it in a savings account. And then, okay, now you want to buy something. Okay, we're going to transfer it to our checking, and now here's the cash, and you get to go buy something. We have to teach our kids. That's the only way, is to teach the younger generations, right? Not the only way, but that's one way we can help, is by teaching the younger generations, like the Junior Achievement, right? They get to be the CFO or the CEO for the day, and what that looks like, and what decisions they have to make. We have to keep pushing the governors and everybody to say, okay, what else are we going to teach them? What else real world stuff? It's kind of in one of the silver linings from my kids being home is like, okay, I'm going to teach you how to start a business. I'm going to teach you about finances. I'm going to teach you about all the things that I didn't learn in school, and I haven't heard that you're learning in school. So we have to keep pushing, and I appreciate all of your support. Teaching adults, offering the free books like Rochelle is, and doing those things because we all need it, right?
Yeah.
Well, and one of the other things I think is really important that has to change, and I think it's starting to change, but not completely. We need to be willing to talk to our children about our own financial situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They need to understand what we do to make our own spending decisions. We need to talk to them about taxes and how taxes work. I was stunned when my 16-year-old, I'm a financial advisor, guys, and my 16-year-old came home with his first paycheck and he said, Mom, why didn't I get all my money? He had no idea they were going to take taxes out of his check. I was like, are you kidding me? And I was stunned and just didn't realize we'd never had that conversation. For a lot of us in our 40s and 50s growing up, money was not a conversation that was had in our houses. We heard things like money doesn't grow on trees, and we wore hand-me-downs, and it was a very different environment. And one of my first money memories is my dad's paycheck was on the table, and he had come home from work in an envelope. He had come home from work, and he and my mom were sitting and visiting, and I was maybe 10, 11, and I reached out to take a look at that check, and he snatched it out of my hand, and he said, "That's none of your business." Wow. And when it could have been such a great learning opportunity. Now let's talk about how much does a job pay and how do you get a job with higher earnings? Maybe we wouldn't have such an income gap if kids understood how to close that gap, right? That you can work for $15 an hour at QT, or you can make $60,000 a year right out of college as an engineer.
I know. We need to keep up the conversations and keep going, especially, we had the crash and still now with this pandemic, people are still in trouble. What happened? Why didn't people learn their lessons at the last crash, to have 3 months or 6 months in savings, right? So we have to keep talking about it. I know Jesus and Rochelle are like, okay, where are you going to save? How are you going to save your money? Where is it, right? You have to have that to qualify for a house, but you also have to have it in cases like this. So we have to definitely keep talking about it.
Yeah. Hey, Jesus, are you seeing millennials come back as buyers yet?
Yes, I've actually, in the last probably year to year and a half, I've seen quite a bit of increase in millennials doing that for sure. And surprisingly, with talking about savings, a lot of them have been doing a very good job at saving and preparing for that. And I think a lot of them, a lot of the stats even show that they saw what happened. They were younger in 2008 and what have you, and saw what happened to their parents. So it's been a little bit of a refreshing breath of fresh air, I guess you could say that they're doing that. But I think the biggest thing, Rochelle, you kind of hit on it earlier, it's a lot of people don't even know where their money goes. They, like you said, they don't look at their bank statements. So they know that at the end of the month they were fine, their bills were paid, and they're in overdraw. So good, nothing happened. But they don't know where the budget. I think that's one of the biggest keys is that people don't budget and understand where their money really goes. It's in a sense throwing money because don't have control over it.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the financial literacy part of it. Just knowing every little bit where it's going to go. How do you prepare for the next 3 to 6 months, like you said, all that. I mean, those are very important factors that we are missing out on still.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're seeing the millennials come back. And when we talk about millennials now, though, we're talking about people in their early 30s. Very different than Gen X. I mean, so Gen X or the boomers, we were buying houses at 25. We were wanting real estate young. And so one of the concerns I have as a financial advisor is it really feels like we kind of have lost an entire generation of investors because of the great financial recession. They're scared of buying homes. And I'm not surprised to hear you say that they're saving really well. You know why they're saving really well? Because they're not willing to invest. I'm stunned at my 20-something kids are horrified at the idea of putting money in the stock market.
Yeah.
And I've had to really educate them about the wisdom of long-term investing. And because they have this myopic view, they've only, their whole lives have been filled with, from 9/11 to the Great Recession, and they just don't feel a confidence in long-term investing. And I think that could really hurt them in the future.
And they're terrified of 401ks and IRAs. They don't trust them. They think that they're going to lose all of their money because it's happened to their grandparents a couple of times, their parents once or twice, and they're just refusing to fund them. It's really just fascinating.
Yeah. So that's another area that we're trying to address as well.
Yeah. So much opportunity lost, especially with, those employers that still contribute to 401k, what have you. I mean, that's money that they're missing out on, quote unquote free money. So, yeah.
And how much more stock you can buy right now, right? In business school, buy low, sell high. Like it's like the first thing you learn, right?
Yeah, the stock market, the only thing no one wants to buy when it's on sale. I don't think that's a good quote. I like that, Nancy. Is there anything, we are getting ready to close the show, but I would like to know from each of you, is there anything that you have heard as a myth in your industry, right? Something that you wish to debunk, whether it's in mortgages or financial, or in your credit. Is there anything that you can, a myth that's out there that you can debunk? Oh, mine is so easy. So many people think you have to have attorneys to get a divorce. No, you do not. Simple as that. No, you do not.
That's good. Rochelle?
Yeah, I would say on the credit side, the biggest thing I see is people disputing everything. You do not need to dispute everything on your credit report. Please stop doing that. It's not helping you.
No, I don't think anybody knows that. Good. I love it. And Jesus, what about you?
I think two things. One, when it comes to purchasing a home, a lot of people think they need to have a substantial amount saved. Yes, I do think that always helps, but there's programs out there that are where we're calling you 3% down into a conventional program. We go into details about that at a later time, but you don't have to have 20% down. There are programs with very low down payment. And on the refinance side of it, that people should always look at all their options. A lot of people just come like, I just want to lower my rate. Well, how about lowering your term? Let's talk about making sure that you can get out your mortgage a lot easier because you're going to save interest. And what I tell people is, how nice would it be that 10 down the road, 15 years down the road, you have no mortgage payment. Let's say your mortgage payment is $2,000 a month. You just got a $2,000 a month raise. You're kind of making yourself, if anything, prepare better for the future because your house paid off, not have that commitment or responsibility.
Great. Now my husband's going to come home and say, hey, Sue said.
Good.
Right now. Thank you so much. Tell us, before we end, tell us where listeners can get a hold of you, Nancy.
Website, smarterdivorcesolutions.com. And, if you have questions about divorce in general, feel free to email me, Nancy at smarterdivorcesolutions.com. And our phone number's on the website. We are all working remotely from home, and we're available to help you out.
Great. Thank you. Rochelle, how about you?
Yeah, my name is Rochelle Poulton, and you can find us online at xfirmlaw.com. And if you have questions, you can always email me at hello@xfirmlaw.com. And we offer a free 15-minute consult just to kind of see what's going on and how we can help. So we just want to be a resource.
Thank you so much. I know you are a little bit different than most attorneys, so don't be scared to call Rochelle, especially with the free 15-minute call, right? I mean, if they can find out how you can help them through all of this. Thank you. Jesus, what about you?
Yeah, so marketmortgagecapital.com is our company's website. Our contact which is on there. My email address is jverdugo@marketmortgagecapital.com. myself and the owner of the company, Chris Smith, we're always available to help you guys out.
Everybody's still working. See, we all can help each other. I know from experience that there are still people buying homes, right? There's still people needing attorneys. There's still people going through a divorce in all of this, right? So don't stop. We always say, don't, just because there's a pandemic, we can still work from home, right? Keep it up. I appreciate all of you guys being on the show today. And I hope that our listeners and everybody on the show has learned something, has a new resource, has a new connection for their businesses. So we really appreciate you being on the show today. Thank you. You've been listening to Collaborative Connections Radio Show and Podcast, sponsored by KLM Consulting. Clients of KLM Consulting can continue to do what they love while having the support they need, because we offer business development strategy sessions, concierge services, ongoing consulting, marketing, project management, and social media training. Tune in on the third Thursday of every month at 1 p.m. Until next time, happy connecting.